everybody. Welcome to Depot TV. I'm your host, Sherry Jackson, Executive Director of the Depot. We hope you have been enjoying our Depot TVs this summer. We've done things a little bit different. We've done a Depot TV takeover last week. Weren't the drag queens beautiful and amazing and brave? And we've been doing some retrospectives. Well, we've got Summer Breeze going on, and tonight is no different. There's something very special about the turn of phrase, about someone who knows how to put words together in a way that they can paint a picture. And often we see that through lyrics in a song, but a growing number of us are enjoying poetry as an art form. It is spectacular to have words take you to a place, evoke an emotion, to be able to listen to someone whose turn of phrase can just transform your moment. And we have loved having poets as a part of Depot TV. And tonight, you get to hear from several of them. We hope you enjoy tonight's show, The Poets of Depot TV.
Tell me secrets in the night sky, whisper lines the ancients knew. Night voices sing hope, fire imagination, kindle souls into red flames to destroy, purge, reseed, create. These Saturnian voices singing of transience. And then I want to read from my book, Bring an Extra Mule, The Anchor. Look inward. There's a field inside you full of daisies and clover, honeybees, and all the things to make a soul. All around you is dying gas, a suffocating mirror, an unfulfilled guest, frustrated lust. But deep within the field at sunrise or at midnight, the breeze stirs, pollen floats, and you know there is more to life than cubicles and charts, keyboards, and media bombs. You know the anchor is resting. Soon you will be free. And then this next one, I want to dedicate to a former student of mine. Some of you may know him. His name is Ernie Za, and he's Navajo and lives out in Arizona. Had the chance to visit with him at his home a couple years ago. I just discovered that he has some serious health issues, and so I want to read this poem titled Native Flute, which I wrote several years ago and dedicated to Ernie, who plays the native flute. And so if you're listening, Ernie, this is for you. And I think all of us in Oklahoma know how beautiful these flutes are. Native flute. In the closing distance, feel pulse behind the woodwind, melody bathed in sweetness like honeysuckle at dawn. Mourn the loss by playing today. Cherish the hope of this time. Sit still and let wind teach its way. Dance in the corridor of souls, looping toward tomorrow, and fear no evil. Play on. Blow the breath of solidarity, your wind catching flight with eternal breath, fingers soft on reeds, springing deep from earth. Oh joy, oh hope. For Ernie, native flute. Well, as I said yesterday, I have a brand new book, and I want to go through some of that. And I think I get a little frustrated sometimes when people talk about nature poetry like it's some sort of sublime, sentimental, non-real thing. I'm concerned that nature be the lesson for us and be the corrector for our faulty ways of living as humans. I think the human being in the poem is supposed to connect itself to the way of nature and not the other way around. So hopefully you see some of that in my work, and many people do. So I don't like this artificial dichotomy between the natural world and the human world. I think it's a false dichotomy, and it's at our peril that we maintain that distance. But I'm going to read a few of these. The first one is titled Prayer. A few months ago, I buried bulbs in the yard. With a shovel, I dug around the pecan tree and on my knees placed bulbs into ground. Then by hand returned the soil, patting it into place to cover the wounds I caused. I rose and for good measure tamped the dirt firm with the sole of my boots, a righteous feeling, my feet entreating timeless earth. What good we do follows the good we believe. The next one I want to read is titled Frosty Morning. Since it's the middle of almost the end of July, I think I'll read some of these that have some frost and winter scenes in them. It's just the way they fall in the book. Frosty Morning. The frosty morning sits soundless as a saint in a hard pew, waiting to see light, to hear what she already knew before she wrapped herself in a peasant-made shawl, walked a few desolate blocks to find the place where she might meet her God. In breathless silence, dark limbs are suspended. There is no green, nothing green can stay. Pecan and dull cedar loom like murals on the face of the earth. Without sun, there is no shadow. Without shadows, we are never whole. The next one is for my friend Becky, who lives in the middle of nowhere in North Arkansas. The title is Feeding Sheep. They hear her stepping through grass and stone. They know her gait, tremble with anticipation beside empty troughs. She talks to them like a child, her hand reaching through wire, offering the first taste of morning. In these electric moments, life begins again. Raspy tongue, wet nose, touching the flesh of palms upturned. Into autumn. I plunge forward, though I often feel I am falling into the whirlpool of time. Despite my clumsy entrance, specks of color pass me by. I catch glimpses of beauty, a sweet charade of death, sure to one day arrive. Autumn is a gift if I am secure enough to receive it, gracious enough to realize what dying leaves offer, what shadows have to say. I'm close to 60, a decade once remote as stars is now just a trail through an oak forest tangled with cedar and briars. There is no turning back. The only choice is to accept wind and rusty leaves for my song, dirt beneath my feet as a brother. Into autumn. Wind. On a January morning when the sun seems new, frost-covered cedars dance like lovers in private bliss. The Apostle John wrote about wind, an unseen, undeniable force. Others did as well, Rumi, Hafiz, Khayyam, and Gibran. I take comfort knowing Jesus is not the only voice crying in vacant places at vacuous times, intervals of history, when a friend may be nebulous, ethereal. Truth is not something shouted or pursued with a sword. Crusades, though prevalent, still fight the wind.
Jerry. Yes, so I titled this reading today Undreaming Dreamland. I knew it was going to be a mixed genre reading for a couple of reasons. And so I wanted to find some way to unify the things that I was going to read today. So yes, I am going to read a bit from Fire and Beulah, but I'm going to read a couple of things prior to that. I'm going to read a poem that is absolutely a dream poem that comes, every image in the poem comes from dreams. And it also is, I was raised on Revelation. I was raised with a kind of apocalyptic church with the sense that the rapture was right around the corner at any moment. So around the time of the millennium, a lot of the imagery that we had of giant change and of apocalyptic change made its way into my dreams. So that's what this particular poem's about. It's called Millennium. 1. Silent dart and sweep and click of beaks, 4 dozen yellow eyes in trees, the flutter, hush. Lone grackle tips one eye to God and down, plucks lunch from off the branch, a green and hunkered grub-fat form unsuckered from the leaves. Inside the house, the taste of rot and dank, the warm-soft wood beneath the floor where water seeped for 20 years unwatched, the tiles pried loose, the walls pulled down, the house gone sour with wet, no wind or breath. 2. The sound begins in slit of sky like distant horns or children's cries, God's squeaking door. The sound of endings, sorrow, loss, of autumn come. First flock slants north where trees divide, black wedge of force, work, joy confused. The others come till sky is dark with honking cries and beating wings. I stand, head back and tremble, not in fear but thrill of force and stunned. The sky is black. The stars are there. 3. Upon the hill, the snake lies flat, its body staked to earth, 2 small cats astride its back, padding sheathed in playful paws. The corpse is thick as human thigh, the chevrons rusted on its back, its neck peculiar, small, no bigger than the scoop of hole inside a napkin ring. A knotted string cuts tight the shriveled throat. The moon is rising. Nearby, the ignorant children play.
This is called The New Landlords. In another time, we'd see them peering out from the trees at the side of the road. At night, their eyes would glow yellow beyond our campfire. It was a thrill to glimpse a white-tailed deer or hare from the window of our passing car. We'd heed the warnings and obey the speed limit on the scenic route. Then we'd see them dead along the highway or feel them as lumps of tar on the pavement, and then we didn't see them anymore. Now the animals are coming back, slowly encroaching the suburbs, nearing the inner city. Mallards paddle in the swimming pool and nest in the flower bed. Plump quail squeeze beneath the barbed wire to see what's good on the other side in the manicured backyard of the tall creatures who barbecue barnyard fowl on the grill. The owl roosts under the eaves, eavesdropping at nightfall to pick up on the unsuspecting mouse or rat or kitten caught up in its petty concerns. The ring-tailed bandit steals through the alleys, beating the garbage man to the goodies. The squirrel makes the attic his penthouse. Even the oleander does not keep the deer away from the garden plot. The coyote, stranded by winter, gives birth to pups in the park and stays where the foraging's so easy. She's growing fat and lazy. The armadillo wages war with armored cars and clicks like a typewriter behind the garbage cans, writing his autobiography in the dust. Rabbits eat the asters, secure in celebrations of Easter. The family dog is bewildered, the instinct to hunt replaced by the desire to sleep in the house and beg for treats and pats. The skunk sprays the house cat, who, humiliated, takes to the woods for weeks, slinking back at last, lured by aromatic memories of canned tuna fish. When next the wolf howls at the door, it will be a real wolf, winter-furred and hungry, wanting the cocker spaniel's place by the hearth. The mountain lion will prowl the canyons between downtown skyscrapers, and the bear will evict Goldilocks and all the rest of us from our houses. I'm going to read just some summer poems to conclude. Feast of Light. I heard the knock-knock at my window and turned to look. I had been staring into space, dreaming at my book, expecting anything. In the lamplight, the white belly of the toad gleamed against the glass, his fingers flattened like the suction cups of childhood's arrows. His deadliness unblunted, his tongue would flicker like a flame to catch the moth who'd passed too near his eternal grin, the half-moon of his jaw. He clung to the pain, precarious, intent, feasting off the lamplight, June bugs, moths, mosquitoes of a summer night. And this is a poem that also dates from my Stillwater days. Red Rock is a little town to the north of Stillwater, and I mention it in the poem. Beating the heat. I drive north toward Red Rock. Dogs head out the window, his eyes and ears distended by the wind we create. There's no need to steer on this straight road. The car rocks only when we hit scars hard winters have bored into the asphalt. The co-op granary looms white and austere as a monastery in the hazy distance of July dusk. The setting sun is a Santa Rosa plum, 49 cents a pound today at the IGA. Dark sneaks up on us. I stop the car between shoulder-high fields of singing weeds. Dog disappears. I light a cigarette and listen to crescendoing Chinese music of crickets and cicadas. I whistle summertime against cacophony. Dog returns, anxious to get back to interesting garbage alleys, soft bed for fleas. I want to sleep under trees, but start the car and turn south to burn in the city-dwelling night. At least today, it's rather cool comparatively, but I watched the weather forecast this afternoon, and it doesn't look too good. The 100-degree days are going to come up and get us. The solstice is almost upon us. Solstice. The summer solstice is a lopsided day. Sunlight spills over to crop the night, a day so long I'm in bed before dark, feeling somehow cheated of time I can't use. I am reminded of those enforced naps on cots in a dingy room with drawn blinds in kindergarten, when I'd lie awake just knowing I was missing something. I hear a cat banging on the door. This happened to me last summer, actually on numerous occasions. Powerless. A power outage at noon on a cloudless summer day means lunch delayed and trying to read in interior twilight while the house grows uncomfortably warm. Tree trimmers summoned by the power company loiter in the shade of the front yard redbud, each looking at his cell phone while limbs litter the lawn. What are they waiting for? I'm stuck inside, afraid to open the refrigerator, let alone open the front door. Then the hard hats form a hasty parade, feeding felled trees into the woodchopper, making me think of Fargo. Still, the dimness and heat increase. The phone goes dead, and I wait for the light that comes at last at dusk, too late for dinner, and I ponder how truly powerless I am to survive outside the grid. Just two more poems. Then maybe, I don't know. I could read a lot more poems, but I've sort of ran out of poems having to do with my theme. I've actually written a bunch of poems about possums. And I think I'll read this poem. It doesn't fit with the theme, but it's the first poem I wrote about a possum. And I've written 4 poems that at least include possums. And actually that should be opossum. So the next poem I write about a possum will be an ode to a possum, and it shall begin, "Oh, possum." But this is playing possum. I do not know the possum, but I have seen him in the back porch light I turned on suddenly to surprise the varmint I heard stealthily rummaging through the garbage. Startled to stillness, his face pointed at me over his round, innocent shoulder. And I have understood the expression, playing possum, as that night by the wall that encloses the cemetery on Grove Street, I stiffened at the glimpse of a huge rat. No, a possum, lying still as stone on the ledge of the wall. I assumed he was hurt or dying. Imagining plague or rabies, I stopped passers-by and finally a policeman who promised he would call the SPCA. As I walked home, those words lit up the darkness and I laughed, then thinking this was a joke. Once I'd caught the possum rooting like a pig for something tasty in my trash. Now he'd caught me. That's a true story about the possum on the cemetery wall. That happened in New Haven. And I actually did stop a policeman who started to draw his gun, and I said, "Oh, no, I think he's sick." And of course, he was playing possum. And this is another poem about a possum, and that is the title of the poem. Barry White, come here. Can you jump up? Come here. Barry, come here. I'm talking to my dog, but he's not going to come up. He's very pretty, but he won't. You want to jump up? Want to jump up? Can you see? There he is. There's my dog. This is Barry White. Anyway, dogs also feature heavily in my poems. And this is another, oops, now you need to get down, sweetheart. This is another poem about a possum. And it's not about Barry White. Barry White is a dog of peace. This is about my last dog, Lizzie, who was a killer. Another poem about a possum. Last night on our last foray into the yard, my dog was surprised by a young possum making its way across the patio. The dog pounced and bit, and the possum hissed, extending its claws, then slumped against the flagstone. I pulled the dog away and ushered her into the kitchen, where I grabbed a plastic bag and paper towels with which to dispose of the corpse. Back outside, I nudged the possum with the toe of my shoe and decided to wait a while. And sure enough, the possum resurrected itself in precise sequence, like a time-lapse photograph of a desert flower blooming. First, it blinked an eye, then closed its gaping maw, stretched a front paw, then another, adjusted its hind legs, straightened its hairless tail, and crept away into the night. And my last poem is probably the shortest poem I ever wrote. Well, it's a little longer than a haiku, and I have written some haiku. It's a litany. A litany is basically a list, and most litanies have a repeated phrase, such as the Hail Mary, the tradition, not having nothing to do with football. Hail Mary, full of grace. Hail Mary, blah blah blah. Frequently, prayers are litanies. In the reconstruction of Druidic tradition, whatever that may be, their riddles were litanies. So this one does not have a repeated phrase. It is just a list. But trust me, I spent a long time getting it just right. Litany of summer dusk. Crescent moon, pecan tree, hackberry, cricket song, firefly, robin chortle, wind chimes stilled, spider a dangle, dog asleep at my feet, dark. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. I promise you, I'm sure it was better than the news.
Hi guys, it's me, Sherry. And guess what this is? It's a commercial. Actually, it's a commercial for commercials. We have time on Depot TV in space, and we need some partners to help support Depot TV and keep it going. But you know what we got? We got this platform and audiences every week. And if you sell a thing or provide a service or just want to support us and say thanks, or if you have a shout out or something you want people to know about, you could become a partner in the Depot and have some commercial time of your very own. So give us a call at 405-307-9320 or email us at office@normandepot.org and find out how this commercial space could be your commercial space. Thanks.
So the book I'm working on now has a lot of poems for my children. I write about what's on my mind. So this is a poem for them. This is called Orphans. My children are pretending that I'm dead. The spider leaves the mimosa tree for shade. They play a game they call the Orphans. Stretched out in grass-balled dirt beside the roots and moaning as they wake from some imagined airplane crash that has left them all alone in darkest jungle. Right away, they start to gather leaves and drop them in a bucket full of rainwater, stirring with a stick and calling it breakfast. I sit on the porch and think, what level-headed kids we've raised, attending to the most important meal, even with my charred and smoking corpse nearby. But then I think of my own mother standing at our screen door, already in her 50s when her mother died, but bawling out into the fields, "I am an orphan," like she was giving voice to something we all know. The children tiptoe out from shade into the glare of sun, exploring their jungle home. They are rehearsing worse scenarios, but also drawing lines around themselves, like people in their coloring books, contoured in solid black for filling in later. The cat with a lazy eye is watching them. They've put mimosa blossoms in their hair. Sitting on the porch, I float between the generations and hear the children's voices tearing ragged strips from summer quiet. I stand, wanting to call to them out there in all that heavy light, but I can barely see them now in the glare. And when I raise my hand to block the sun, I freeze, suddenly aware of how much I look like a man who is waving goodbye. This is an older poem I wrote for my children. It's from my second book, Lapse Americana. And it's about an experience I think most parents have probably had, sort of teaching my children about jokes. And I noticed when they were learning about jokes and how to tell them that they really picked up the form before they picked up the content. And I just found that really interesting, and it made me think about the sort of liturgical nature of jokes, the way they take this form that's recognizable, that we can step into, that bonds us together. So I call this knock knock jokes. This silly liturgy, common as salt in our bodies, can conjure up a door between any two people in any place and then open it. I carefully teach it to my two small daughters one night in the tub, going over the routine like it was the names of our ancestors, a catechism of nonsense while I work the soapy rag between their toes. No, you say knock knock, I'll say who's there. They need this common knowledge. Go up to any person on the street, any executive, any farmer, and say, knock, knock. And like two neighbors from a faraway village suddenly met beneath city lights, there is connection. So much so that should I ever find myself small at the big end of a gun, I will travel the long highway of the barrel until I have reached the wall that is the angry face and seek the door that is the eye and say, knock, knock. Here's a shorter poem that I wrote about passing of my father. This is called What Peter Looked Like Stepping on Water. Maybe like my drunk buddy trying to ice fish on a farm pond in Oklahoma, suddenly ankle deep in cold cow water. Or like my own small son staggering across the living room rug toward his mother. But maybe like my father, lifted light as a bag of popcorn in my arms, slippered feet brushing the floor between the hospice bed and wheelchair, voice swallowed in the unmoving ocean of morphine, the pupils of his eyes, two little boats bobbing somewhere far out on that motionless sea. And I wrote this poem about my inheritance. This is called My Grandfather's Fake Rolex. The one the pawnbroker rubbed his stubby thumb over to show me how gold plating flakes from fakes. The one I couldn't get enough for to buy a case of beer, so kept in a Chinese teapot on my bookshelf for years. A fitting inheritance from a man whose fake hair used to make me laugh in secret, who talked about his bombing missions in the war, but never mentioned they were training missions over Nebraska. A fitting inheritance for me, a man who once told a colleague he played high school football, even though I quit after the 8th grade. We say many things out of the urge to revise. My father's sister, who bought her father the watch in Tokyo 30 years after the war, while the cherry blossoms rioted pink in the streets, could sometimes say she had a happy childhood and not mention the mother who abandoned them. I remember the watch loose in the pawnbroker's fingers, the way he turned it like falling water through his hands, like water falling and gone. I think I'll read now some poems from my most recent book of poetry, Black Sunday. I don't know how to get things on camera. This is a work that's a little different than from my previous work or from the book I'm working on now, because it's a narrative sequence of sonnets in the voice of several characters living through the Dust Bowl in the panhandle of Oklahoma. I started this book before I became Poet Laureate in 2015, but then started working on it much more earnestly in that period, because I figured it was sort of my job to tell this story, since the Dust Bowl is sort of the Trojan War of the Oklahoman people. So I'll read just a few of these and introduce you to some of these characters. The first character we meet is named Lily, and Lily Burns is the mother in a farming family who are experiencing many of the worst aspects of the Depression and the Dust Bowl. Lily Burns describes the static in the air. The static in the dust could knock a big man down and stall a car mid-street, its dark battery drained. Soon men learned how to rig their cars with dragging chains to ground the spark. Too late for us. We couldn't leave the town at all, our truck not coming back from dead without more money. Sitting there, the brown Ford collected dust in its rusty bed. That dust got higher every day and spilled from the dead bed slowly, an hourglass of sorts to keep count of what time we killed by suffocation. Slowly, day would pass. At night, I'd listen to the darkened plains, where cars, like angry ghosts, rattle their chains.
But I did write one poem in response to the pandemic, which I'd like to start with as sort of a prologue for you. And it's about an experience I had during that time when we had all that rain going on, and the lockdown was starting to get hard to deal with. So this poem is called Acceptance, or It's a Trade-Off. In lockdown, to escape the ravages of a deadly contagion, fearful, irritated by a loud pelting rain. You piddle about trying to avoid the fog of encompassing dread. Have an orange, a slice of toast, pick up the phone, put the phone down, pick up a book, put the book down, stare at an x-ray, look at your hands as if you might be able to diagnose the spores clinging to them. A few groggy minutes later, the toast ignored, coffee in need of heat, orange peel tossed in trash, book shut, the rain slowed to a mournful mist. You stare out the window and watch the dark sky, a low diffuse, backlit by a remote sun, diffuse, a low watt soft gray light that reveals thousands of pollen spores, nestled together in collective rest, shimmering in a glow of spring green on a trunk of an ageless oak. As if in wait for the next breeze to disperse them each into the air, on this chance, some will beat the odds and satisfy an urge to propagate. You may or may not be hearing a probably red cardinal likely echo what could be a faint jittery warning of an approaching storm in a past you may or may not have put behind you, while an electromagnetic force guides you to what may be or not an astral plane, where you too wait as one among the pollen spores on the trunk of the rain-soaked oak, to feel what might or might not be the radiated layers of earth made fecund by an energy pulsing 800 miles up from the planet's molten core to warm the soil and germinate the seed that will sprout and flower new life. Soon after, while the backlight fades and leaves a veil of darkened sky, the iridescent green spores change in a chameleon-like camouflage to a muffled gray on the oak tree's bark, and you return to a body now home to a restless mind that has no thought but to wonder why you get up to put some fig jam on the toast and reheat the coffee before you reopen the book to where you left off last time. The hard falling rain renewed, the coffee hot, the book read, the dread forgot by the sweet taste of jam alive on your palate. No, not forgot, accepted, like the one pollen spore that only moments ago might have been your metaphorical self, except it has been encoded to wait for the planet to spin a breeze and send it on its predetermined way to plant new life in the expected earth in fair trade for its final fate. Undisturbed by the pouring rain, pleased, your mind is clear, defogged by a metaphorical breeze that brings an acceptance to the grave to come, and a human craving revived to brew coffee, eat toast with jam, content to reopen your book and trade off lockdown isolation with its fear of pandemic contagion for the full privilege of a safe home so many others do not have. You reread Ken Hada's poem, which advises you, bring an extra mule, just in case. The next poem is about those who do not have a home to respond in a patient way to the lockdown. It's called Dying Leaves and Other Fatalities. The dying leaves, chased by a cold and blustery wind, each leaf cluttering on its own, are blown into their final rest, a mound in a dead-end doorway bedecked with a red ribboned wreath. And Sandy Hook children scramble in fear of an abstract death from the spray of a Bushmaster 10-round semi-automatic held by a demented man-child jealous of innocence. pedestrians in Charlottesville protesting swastika armbands are run down by a white Dodge when a supremely white boy puts foot to pedal to pacify the chat room hate echoing in his mind. And today, when scores of sun-blistered, hungry and parched men, women and children who seek asylum in El Paso are turned away by border guards, accessories with double-armed 40 caliber 13-round pistols. Today, or yesterday, or tomorrow, a 7-year-old child in flight from theft, rape, and murder in her Guatemalan homeland died of dehydration and shock in U.S. custody. The next poem is the first line of the next poem. The title of the next poem is the first line. God damn the preachers of destruction who shine their teeth in cufflinks, knot their ties, and put on plastered smiles to preach sermons wet with intolerance, who feign a mom and pop Norman Rockwell country to a country of Xbox war games and high school massacres, who gull the faithful to forsake the flesh as insult to God and condemn free thought as original sin, who peddle a prosperity gospel as they pick the pockets of the poor, the old, the bereft of mind, who encourage fear and paranoia to create fertile ground for a belief in Armageddon, who con their marginalized worshippers to blame their sorry state on others more marginal than they, who sound a Southern accent when they call to get rid of America of its hard, blood, dark-skinned immigrants' threat, who conspire with politicians to back laws that incorporate state and nation into one Christian nation, who pray to a white God and pledge the flag in Jesus' holy name to sanction a bogus war on terror, who wave freedom's banner to shade out the faces of the innocent dead while they reap dividends for the few from the slaughter of the many. God damn the preachers of destruction. The next poem is the opening poem of the book Notes for Hard Times, called A Note for Hard Times, and it's a kind of a prayer. It's a prose poem. It's kind of a prayer and a meditation in answer to all of that I just read in the previous two poems. Oh, my dear friends, my dear family of citizens, my neighbors, my buried loves, my own living beloved, my known and unknown, wrongly betrayed and punished, my dear sweet innocence and fear of the approaching dark. I am myself your sorrow as you are mine. But I will not dismay, for sorrow will not admit of dismay. Dismay is prelude to despair, despair, prelude to paralysis. I will not dismay the distant dark summoned by the wicked who embrace the authority of the absolute. I will not dismay the complacent, the deniers, the collaborators who in fear for survival pay lip service to the powerful. I will not dismay the self-serving who fill the space of our lives with condemning thoughts and abusive gestures toward the other. Nor will I dismay the dreadful silence of those who feign innocence. I will not dismay, my dear friends, for I can hear that faint but certain murmur of hope pulsing at the core of our common sorrow. The hope that was born from an ancient marriage of heart and mind, the hope that cradles those odd cousins of outrage and compassion which fuel our courage to speak out, to act, to honor that same hope which the first two lovers of our species carried into the wilderness in quest of a civilization that has led us thus far to our endangered, imperfect Eden.
Hi, guys. It's me, Sherry. And guess what this is? It's a commercial. Actually, it's a commercial for commercials. We have time on Depot TV in space, and we need some partners to help support Depot TV and keep it going. But you know what we got? We got this platform and audiences every week. And if you sell a thing or provide a service or just want to support us and say thanks, or if you have a shout out or something you want people to know about, you could become a partner in the Depot and have some commercial time of your very own. So give us a call at 405-307-9320 or email us at office@normandepot.org and find out how this commercial space could be your commercial space. Thanks. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We will see you next week where we'll be rebroadcasting another Summer Breeze show. Thank you. Thank you very much to the sponsors, to the people, the individual donors who have made all of the programming of the Depot possible, including folks like you who could join as a member of the Depot for as little as $5 a month. We're about to head into an August membership drive, and we would love to have you. Matter of fact, we'll kick things off for this drive a little bit early. If you've stuck around this far, just comment member on this post and we will gift you a basic membership to the Depot. Thanks, everybody. Good night. See you next week.